And let's see if that helps. All right. So this is Jonathan Saenz. I'm the president of Texas Values. We're live here on YouTube. We've done most of our work on Facebook, and so our first time to kind of do YouTube. So bear with me, but put some comments in there if you want to let us know how we're doing. I can see on the side here streaming. But this is about how the coronavirus impacts your Texas values of faith, family, and freedom. You know, Texas Values is a leading organization in the state that works on the issues of faith, family, and freedom. That's law, that's policy. We like to say the courts, the legislature, and the media. And there's a lot going on. So if you're watching this video, share it or whatever it's called on YouTube. Subscribe, put something in the video, give us a thumbs up. We're trying to increase our reach. You know, it sort of feels like a different audience on YouTube than it is on Facebook. I haven't looked at a lot of data. I just know I've heard people talk about that. I know from, you know, people in my family, it seems maybe a younger generation is on YouTube. You let us know how we're doing. But we want to talk about some of the updates and things that are going on in the state of Texas as it relates to faith, family, and freedom, and how the coronavirus is impacting what we like to call Texas values. And so if you're not familiar with our group, you can go to txvalues.org, see more about our work and what we're doing. But we've got 12 members of our team, and we do work in law and policy. We do a lot of media work. We've got people that have legal backgrounds and business backgrounds and public policy backgrounds. We're one of the most active organizations at the state capitol. That slowed down a little bit, at least physically being there. We're trying to do that virtually in different ways. But if there's any issues that come up in the state of Texas that impact the issues of religious liberty, that impact, I see my son is now subscribed. Hey, at least that's one. Thanks, Jonah. I appreciate you, buddy. But hey, subscribe right now if you like some of the work we're doing, or if you want to just hear a little bit more about what we're doing. And so, but as I was mentioning, you know, we look at the issues of the courts, the legislature, and the media. If there's anything that comes up in the state of Texas that has an impact on religious liberty, marriage and family, and pro-life issues, parental rights, the First Amendment, it's very likely Texas Values, our nonprofit organization, is going to be involved in one way or another. And so we've got a tremendous following on Facebook, 250,000 followers on Facebook, but we'd like to get a little bit more exposure on YouTube and try to connect with different audiences. So you let us know. And I've only seen 2 comments so far, and that's from our communications associate, James Wasolik. So we need a few more. So drop us some comments, let us know how we're doing, and we'll take a look at that. But I want to get into the heart of what this video is about and these updates that we're doing. And it's about keeping people updated on what's happening when it relates to the issues of faith, family, and freedom. And really what's happening as it relates to the COVID-19, the coronavirus issue, to religious liberty, marriage, and family. Look, over the weekend, huge weekend for us as Christians, right? You had Easter Sunday, you had Good Friday, you had Holy Week. And unfortunately, what we saw was across the country, several incidents that were going on where churches were being targeted, or they were being fined or punished by the government for simply having Easter services. I mean, what do you expect the church to do? Of course, churches are going to have services and do things maybe a little bit different. But here's what's interesting. These churches were doing everything they could to follow CDC guidelines at the federal level, and still they had law enforcement try to impact them. And so what they were doing was they were doing the social distancing. They were in parking lots. And I think many of them with their windows rolled up. Any of y'all gone through drive-through lately? I mean, that's what everybody's doing. And so if you can have, you know, dozens of cars like in Walmart or a grocery store that we're seeing, or Home Depot, or your hardware store, why would it be any different that you'd see cars in a parking lot at a church? And many of them were quite well distanced, different than you see at a lot of the grocery stores. And so that's the way the First Amendment works. The government cannot say that it's okay for one set of group to have a set of rules when it relates to social distancing and so on, but then say, oh, no, the church can't do that. And so, you know, we had a video earlier. We do a weekly radio show called the Texas Values Report, and we had a lawyer that was on from Alliance Defending Freedom talking about this. He was talking about the example of Sonic. I don't know if there's a Sonic where you live. This is a hamburger stand, hamburger drive-through, but it's really a drive-in, okay? It is, you drive up to a little window and you give your order, and a lot of times you just stay there and you eat in your car. And he was noticing, look, if Sonics are open, and you know, these have been businesses that have been promoted, try to keep them open any way they can, but you don't have to interact with a lot of people directly. You're not rubbing shoulders with people. So if Sonic can stay open, why couldn't the church be open, particularly the parking lot of a church on Easter Sunday, of all places. Now, look, I was in my home for Easter Sunday with my family. We were watching online. We're fortunate that we go to a church that has the resources to stream online and to put together the technology to do that. But a lot of churches don't. And a lot of times, particularly something like Easter Sunday, people wanted to be there close to the structure that they're used to. You have these sunrise services where people want to take all that in. And so, and I want to talk a little bit about that because, if you're in the state of Texas, there's guidance on this issue, okay? There's a houses of worship guidance document. Maybe we can put that in the comments section. I think James Wasolika is watching from our team. But it's definitely on our website, txvalues.org. We're the largest organization in the state of Texas that's nonprofit that works on the issues of faith, family, and freedom. We've got over $1 million budget. We got 12 members of our team. But so check our website, txvalues.org. But this is a guidance letter from Attorney General Paxton, the state attorney general for the state of Texas, guidance for houses of worship. This came out about a week and a half ago. And he makes it clear the government must give special consideration to houses of worship when issuing orders related to the coronavirus. We've got the U.S. Constitution. There's a good reason why the Constitution has a First Amendment, why religious liberty is in the First Amendment of the Constitution, and that's because it's so important that we put it first, okay? Free speech, religious liberty. And so the local governments can't do something different and offend the U.S. Constitution and the First Amendment just because of the coronavirus. You also have a state law called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Many other states have the same law. There's a law like it at the at the federal level. And so you've got to, when a government's doing this, they've got to have a really good reason. And they've got to use what's called the least restrictive means if they do have a government policy, which means they've got to be extremely careful in how they do this. And one way they have to do it is they can't treat churches different than other businesses. And so that was a point. If the Sonic or your local burger place or your fast food joint, if they can have a drive-in service to get food, then why can't churches have a drive-in service? Now, it's unusual. It's not typical for churches to have drive-in services in the parking lot, but they don't lose their ability to do that just because they've never done it before, or it's not as common as them meeting inside the church. That parking lot is still their property, okay? It's not for the government just to decide on their own. Here's the other thing that happened in the state of Texas, and maybe you can see this here. Governor Abbott designated churches, I'm going to put this up even closer, houses of worship as essential services. See that right there in the middle? Essential services. That word's been really important, right? Certain businesses have been able to stay open, like Home Depot and the grocery store, because they're essential. Speaking of Home Depot and the grocery stores, and I'm not picking on them, but you've been in the parking lot of them lately? The cars are like one next to each other, okay? So they're pretty crowded. And look, and we get that. But for many of us as Christians, going to church on Sunday, or at least connecting with that physical building in one way or another, and a lot of times the cross is there, that's essential to us, okay? That's like bread and water. It's not just figurative. And so, look, let's take a look at the rest of this document. Houses of worship, though, whenever possible, should conduct their activities from home or through remote audio or video services, okay? And look, a lot of churches are trying to be reasonable with all this. They're trying to be flexible and not put other people at risk as well. But the point here is that if you can't do that, then you have to be able to have another option. Okay, because many churches were not ready for this. Many of them don't have a lot of technology. That's not what they do. Okay, they open up their doors. They preach from the Bible, from God's word every Sunday, and a lot of times during the week. They're not, some churches are like this, but many of them don't have a lot of technology that goes along with it. Many of them are very small, and so if you need to do that, CDC guidelines. Okay, check those out. And look, I want to state this up front too. I say up front, this video has been going on for 9 minutes. We're almost at 10 minutes. How are we doing? I'm still only at my son. Come on. And James from our team. Look, I see 5 people. If you haven't made a comment yet, drop us a comment to let us know you're alive back there and somebody's actually watching this video. And look, I'm going a little off script here, okay? This is the first time we're doing kind of this live streaming from my home. So don't be afraid to drop us some comments. I'm just trying to have a little bit of fun with it, mix it up. But these are serious topics, and that's why we're taking time to bring them with you. But what I wanted to mention, though, before I move forward, is what I should have said, is I'm not aware, particularly in the government in Texas, our governor, or at the federal level, that any of those government officials have said churches must close. Now, there may be some local government officials that have done that, and if they're not already, they're going to be in a lot of trouble for doing that. But my main point is that's not what we're hearing overall. We're not hearing, the government officials say churches got to lock their doors and never go back in, or at least for now. But I understand that might be the impression, because when you hear the government say you got to have 10 or less, or you could be fined, in some of these scenarios, you've had government officials and some of these rules say that you could go to jail. I mean, you had pastors and members of churches get a $500 ticket over the weekend for Easter services. And a lot of that's been rescinded now, but that's where things were just a couple of days ago. But my main point on this is that the churches have not been told they've got to close and not come back for 4 or 5 weeks. But I understand some may have done that in order to be safe. There are ways that you can operate, at least for now. We're hoping that's going to get reopened and opened up more robustly. And that's what I want to talk about here. CDC guidelines, right? If a house of worship cannot conduct its services remotely due to a lack of capability, technological or financial, then it should follow the governor's executive order that houses of worship are to conduct their services in accordance with the White House guidelines. For example, instruct sick employees, volunteers, and guests to stay at home. Practice social distancing by maintaining appropriate distance between people. And I'm going to turn my volume down a little bit on my end because I think my microphone is working well. But I also know that that my sound here on my own equipment is a little bit loud, so there's a little bit of echo. I'm going to bring that down a little bit, but still keep this chat going up here. Okay, good. I'm navigating some of this well. I have a law degree. I don't have a technology degree. That doesn't mean I don't know how to do some of this, but so y'all bear with me, and I'm getting a little, some good support from our technology team on the back end, but we're all trying to adjust working from home here. Okay, so the next thing, maintain good hygiene by washing your hands frequently and not using your face, not touching your face, cover your coughs, using hand sanitizer, clean and disinfect work areas. Houses of worship, like providers of other essential services, are to follow additional guidance from the White House and CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, whenever possible. Here's what it also says, though. In detail, some houses of worship must avoid large gatherings when they can, but if a community is experiencing a moderate or substantial spread, then the CDC recommends a reduction in activities and cancellation of activities with 10 or more. So it goes into some good details here, all right? But then on the back of this, it does say, for example, a church may hold Easter services in its parking lot with attendees remaining in their cars, windows up, parked in every other parking spot, with the minister using amplification to preach. Or because the executive order permits drive-throughs to operate, then a house of worship may, according to their faith practices, provide communion or a blessing through a similar drive-up service. And so, James, if you're still watching this, if you can let me know if my sound is still good, because I pulled my sound down a little bit. I want to make sure the microphone's working okay there on the public end. But the point being made here is that churches still have ability to exist. Now, look, we want things opened up a lot more as we move forward, or we're looking forward to that when appropriate. And we think we're hearing from a lot of churches that's what they're wanting to move forward with that as well. But it's not going to be the same. People are now adjusted to realizing, okay, I need to be a little bit more careful, keep 6 feet between us, sanitize your hands, all that. If I'm sick, I'm not going to go to church, or at least not in the building. So I think we can trust that a lot of people are going to take these common sense measures, but that's no reason to just keep it at such a small number. But I don't think a lot of people are aware of the freedoms that they do currently have, but also that there's direct guidance from the Attorney General and from our governor. And that means if a local government steps out of line and tells you can't even have one of these drive-in services, you can't have a parking lot service, they're going to be in trouble, not only from our organizations like First Liberty, or also organizations like Alliance Defending Freedom that are currently involved in court cases like this, but the Attorney General as well. I mean, if you're the local government, you're a subsidiary of the state. You can't just go out there and do what you want and be in direct conflict with what the state leaders and state government, and particularly our state Attorney General, said. And just in case you're not aware of this, the Attorney General of the state of Texas is the top law enforcement officer of the state. So really, they answer to him as far as what the law is and how to enforce it. I'm going to pull, excuse me, from some of my notes because my trusty assistant stepped away here in my home. But I want to pull up some notes here and talk about some other issues. We've heard, all right, my assistant is back, all right, from his popcorn snack. I'm sure he was engaging in. But look, I want to talk about another big issue. How are some of these restrictions temporarily impacting things related to the issue of life and related to abortion? We know that the governor in the state of Texas and many other governors put out a rule saying that some of these medical procedures that are not necessary to save someone's life are have to be halted, if you will, for now. Well, the Attorney General of Texas did an analysis, and that not only includes dermatologists or ophthalmologists, things of that nature, but it also includes abortion providers. And so there was a court, so that went into place, all right? And so for about a week, the abortion industry and the abortion clinics had to stop their life-taking methods. When all of us are trying to preserve lives, they want to focus even more on taking lives. And so they sued the state of Texas. We filed a brief at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, supporting the governor's position, supporting the attorney general, but writing on behalf of 11 states. I'm going to pull that list. So here are the 11 states that joined us on this legal brief at the Court of Appeals. We had Indiana, we had South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Alaska, California, Ohio, Nebraska, Washington, Kentucky, Louisiana, along with another organization called the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists. It's a membership organization of obstetricians and gynecologists. And so we filed this and we won, along with the state of Texas, who did really the heavy lifting. We filed a brief in support of their work, but also had a unique voice because the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, when they were deciding this, the lower court ruled that the governor's rule on this had to be set aside. Well, that got overturned very quickly by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And they said before they made their decision, their final decision and a more analysis on this, they wanted to hear from several states. If you hear some noise in the background, the kids are, they're getting ready for dinner. And so the joys of doing a video from home. But nonetheless, they wanted to hear from numerous states, okay, about how this issue should be handled because other states were taking up this issue. So we wrote a brief with 10 or 11 states on that and this other medical organization, if you will, and had a great victory at the Fifth Circuit. But then the abortion industry came back and filed another lawsuit, or they filed another request to get a lower court judge to stop the governor's order so they could keep killing, so they could keep taking the lives of innocent human beings. And the judge ruled in their favor, but in a limited way. It went up to the Fifth Circuit. They also ruled in a limited way. So a vast and high number of abortions are still being halted because of this tremendous work by our governor, our attorney general, and I have to admit, I at least say some of the members of our legal team and policy team that participated, even though we didn't do quite as much lifting as the attorney general's office, they have been working tremendously. They need to be applauded and continue to be prayed for. And so we're about 20 minutes into this video. If you're just catching on, we're talking about how the coronavirus is impacting your Texas values of faith, family, and freedom. And we want you to hear more about that. We're about 20 minutes in. We're probably going to go about 10, 15 more minutes. And a big part of the reason we're having this video, we're doing it live, we want to connect with more people. If you care about the issues of faith, family, and freedom, if you care about the First Amendment of the Constitution, if you care about our state and our federal Constitution, you need to be engaged with our work and hear more about some of the things that we're doing and get updates on these issues. But this court case is weaved all over the place on this abortion ruling as it relates to the executive order from Governor Abbott on the COVID and coronavirus restrictions. And so it's been up and down between the lower court and the appeals court, and it's been a lot of work. But somewhere in between there's been about 14 or 15 days where the abortion clinics could not perform abortions. And there's about 140 abortions performed every day on average. And those are based on 2017 statistics from the state. That's about as accurate as we could get or more current. So we estimate close to somewhere between 1,500 and possibly 2,000 lives have been saved because of this ruling and common sense ruling. Guess who the only entity is that has filed a lawsuit against the governor? All these other medical surgeries had to be halted, not just abortion, but across the board, all right? And guess which industry was the only one out of all of them, the abortion industry, they're the only ones that have filed a lawsuit. Everyone else, you can say, has been understanding and reasonable because they understand the health and safety risks that are involved with the coronavirus. But it just kind of matches up, doesn't it? I mean, because the abortion industry, they're not focused, nor do they seem to care about the preserving of life. They're in the business of taking lives. So it should be no surprise that they were using this time that we have all been using to try to be safe and preserve life. They've been trying to use it as an opportunity to advance and be in the middle of making it easier for them to take lives and be an exception. And one of the reasons I mentioned that is because the court addressed this. Okay, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, they hit the nail on the head with this. And they lay out the framework as far as what the court's allowed to do in these situations, that when it relates to things that are public health measures. Because it's not the first time we've had a significant public health measure in our country, but it's been quite a while. And there's not been a whole lot of court cases on it, but there's a particular case from 1905. Okay, it's been a while. Jacobson versus the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And for the principle that under the pressure of the great dangers, and you can kind of see this here, under the great dangers, constitutional rights may be reasonably restricted as the safety of the general public may demand. Now, those are words I don't really like to hear all that much. As a constitutional attorney, as a First Amendment lawyer, that's where the focus of my work has been. But look, this is rule of law. There's a reason why we have order in our country different than other countries, and there's not chaos to the degree that you see in some other places, because, you know, we do have to follow rules, even though we may not always like them. But this is something I think we can handle because it's temporary. But then the court goes on to say that settled rule allows the state to restrict, for example, one's right to peaceably assemble, to publicly worship, to travel, and to even leave one's home. Those are the restrictions that have been placed on us. The right to abortion is no exception. Man, they just were so detailed but short and to the point. So I want to put this up here so you can read that. And why? Because the abortion industry seems to always think they're exception to laws and to common sense and health and safety measures. So maybe no surprise that they would have felt like, oh, well, we can kind of continue to do what we want. We're so, important and special. But you know what? You're not. And the federal court made that very clear. Abortion's not essential. And that's why they ruled that the state continue to have these common sense measures in place, and that the abortion industry is not going to be an exception to that. So, look, we can start counting these days, 140 on average. Now, the court recently allowed a situation where you could have a medical abortion. That's not to be taken lightly either, though. I mean, what those numbers are, it's not real clear to us at times. Could be more, could be less. But that was some of that analysis was this sense that maybe they don't have to go to a major medical facility or need emergency care. But a lot of people say differently. Abby Johnson's put something up about this and talked about there's a scene in the movie Unplanned where when you take different medication that can cause an abortion, boy, there can be some devastating consequences. Now, we certainly don't hope for that, but you got to be real about what the risk and threat is. And so, but I don't think we've seen the end of that court case. And even if they've allowed it in this one setting, that's not the end of that. It's not going to be the end of our work, but it is a testament to how important it is to have organizations like us equipped to do that, to have great elected officials like the Attorney General and our state Governor Greg Abbott that understand the wisdom of this to also fight it in court. Now, you could have seen the abortion groups filed something and the governor said, you know what, we got other things to deal with. We're just going to pull back on this. No, they stood firm because they know that the principle matters and it makes sense. And so I want to talk about a couple of other things too. There's a lot been going on the issue of sex education, even though public schools and ways being taught's a little bit different. We can't think that school districts like Austin ISD and others are not still going to try to push some of these things. And so we want people to where you can opt out of that. You have the legal right to opt out of that. Go to our website, txvalues.org. We can help you with that. We know that the coronavirus has also impacted how the State Board of Education does things. We did a video earlier this week, a live video with State Board of Education member Barbara Cargill, and she was able to give information about how they've changed some of their process. They're now doing a lot more online. We submitted videos and testimonies yesterday online, similar to what some of the courts are doing for, things related to what's coming up next on the State Board of Education is going to decide if there are any changes that need to be made to health and sex education and how that's taught in over 1,200 public school districts in the state of Texas. These are big, important issues that are coming up in 2 or 3 weeks. So we're getting ready to embrace and work our way through the technology, and so we can get people connected that. But you don't have to be an organization like us to submit testimony to the State Board of Education here in Texas. You can do that as well as someone that's just a member of the public, and we're here to help you do that. Mary Elizabeth Castle and Jonathan Covey from our team were submitting that testimony yesterday, so I think they have a pretty good idea of how to do it moving forward. If you want more information, email us at info@txvalues.org. And if you're watching this video, we're getting a little bit longer than some of our videos. Don't forget to subscribe. Okay, hit the subscription button, tell your friends about some of the work we're doing. And then our main website is txvalues.org. I want to throw something in too before I forget. Okay, whether it's getting warm where you are or cold, because we know how it is in Texas. If you don't like the weather, just wait a few minutes, it'll change. Okay, so whether you need to keep that drink warm or whether you need to keep that drink cold, okay, this new Arctic, where's that little Arctic logo? I don't know if you can see it with the video here. Maybe, it's hard to see, maybe a little bit. There it is, I see it coming into focus. We've got these new insulated tumblers. Mine doesn't have the cap on it because that's one of my weaknesses is I don't always keep track of those tops very well. But this is a great insulated tumbler. And usually if you send in a donation for $100 and you send us an email saying that that's what that donation was about, we'll send you one of these in free. You know what? I might get in trouble. I'm going to cut it in half. We cut it to 75 a couple of weeks ago. I know people are struggling out there, but they still want to make donations. $50, okay? You make a donation to Texas Values, $50 will give you this insulated tumbler, but you got to send an email to info@txvalues.org and say, hey, I just donated. I sent in $50. Can you please send me the insulated Texas Values tumblers? I love these things. It's interesting. It's the simple things in life, but we went to a different brand that just has a much better product. I really like that we've got a Texas company that we're helping support. We ordered, I don't know, a couple hundred of these. I don't remember how many, but we're starting to collect dust in our office because we're not there as much. Nancy Carter from our office is going in about once a week. Let's give her a little bit, time to do this. I want to say give her more work to do. She does great work, but give her a chance to switch gears and not just have to answer the phone. She'd love to send out some of these tumblers. So $50 donation, txvalues.org. Send an email, info@txvalues.org. I want to mention too, before we wrap things up, Governor Abbott, we're talking a lot about what he did on religious liberty, also on the life issue. And he had a huge announcement today, okay? Big press conference, a lot of people there. It was a lot of rollout or talk about it during this week. And so they didn't get into a whole lot of specifics, but they did put out some dates for the end of April and early May that you're going to see some businesses opening up and, kind of restoring a little bit more of that freedom and really a lot of essential services, that people would think of that they want to get in, really more opportunity for people to go back to work, maybe start moving that direction of getting back to some so-called normalcy. But I think one of the big things that was talked about was that the schools in Texas are going to be closed for the end of this school year, public and private as well. And so, this which is likely to mean that a lot of people are going to want to work from home a little bit more. Even if your business comes back up, you may find it more convenient to work from home because the kids are at home, right? They're not going to be gone from 8 to 4 or 8 to 3:30 like usual. So we'll see how all that operates. But I believe that applies to universities as well. And so I think we're going to continue to look for ways to embrace a lot of technology to work remotely on some of these issues and navigate some of these things, but that will impact us figuring out how do we help people opt out or in places like Austin ISD, are they still going to teach some of the radical sex education that they were going to push out? Are they still going to be able to do it now that more people are watching at home? Before it was harder for parents to know what was being taught in the classroom because they weren't there. And a lot of times people felt like they weren't getting all the information. There was no transparency. Now that they got to send it to you ahead of time, like a lot of these programs are sent, or they're sending, telling you here's what your kid's homework's going to be, and parents are able to watch, right there from their own home. We'll see how that turns out, but that's not going to let up on our ability to tell people opt out of Austin ISD. And it's not just us and a collection of other groups. It's entities that are wide and large, like the Catholic Diocese of Austin is encouraging all their members that are in public schools to opt out of the radical sex education. But Governor Abbott, we're going to put his video up on our Facebook page, but you should check it out. He gets into a little bit of detail. One of the things, I didn't expect this to really draw that much attention, but I was watching, and one thing that I thought it was seemed a little unusual that he'd be asked this question, knowing what the governor is all about and the history of our state. But I just put out a tweet when Governor Abbott was asked, will there be a tax hike or something of that nature? And he seemed to pause on it because I don't think he expected it. And then it seemed like a strange question because that's usually not how we do things in Texas. But it also, to me at least, it sounded almost like not if, but when and how high. And Abbott was like, there are not going to be any tax hikes in Texas. And so I just tweeted out, but it was good for him to say that. There will be no tax hikes. And so I tweeted it out, and Ben Shapiro and some other people retweeted it. And so that always helps get a little bit more traffic when someone like that picks up on your comment. But that was a notable thing too from the press conference, even though that's not what they went in there to do. But to clear that up in case anyone was wondering, and a lot of people are wondering, I mean, things are getting a little bit tough, and economically we see how the oil business is doing in the state of Texas. But check out our website, txvalues.org. We put out a great email about a week ago letting churches know what resources are available to them if they're trying to get this payroll protection plan for their nonprofit organizations. I hear money's getting a little bit tight on that. Some are saying it's running out. I imagine you're going to see some of that extended. So we put some information about what your rights are as a nonprofit church and what you can do in regards to protecting payroll. People a lot of times forget churches are, for all intents and purposes, nonprofit corporations. They're businesses. They have people on staff. They have bills that they have to pay. And so that's one reason why we're hoping churches can open up more fully soon. We know that impacts their ability for people to donate to them because they're not there with them in the pews, even though a lot of people are giving online these days. But also for the churches, we put out this Houses of Worship resource. We also put out a great resource that we've got on our website, that relates to pregnancy resource centers and the life-saving work that they're doing to provide diapers and formula and really essential goods for mothers and children, that's really the only resource that they have. And so we've gotten a lot of feedback on that. A lot of people are looking for that. That's on our website. But it's also something we send out in a great email. So if you're interested in the work we do, you can sign up for our weekly emails and get some of our alerts. Check out our Facebook page, Instagram. We're on Twitter. Obviously, we're on YouTube. And we do a weekly radio show, the Texas Values Report. But our goal continues to be to keep people educated but informed on these issues, whether it's the coronavirus or the legislative session coming up soon or important election season that we're typically right in the middle of, but it's kind of slowed down because of dealing with the virus. But even if we can just pray for you, okay, send us a note, info@txvalues.org. We'd be happy to do that. We've got 2 members of our team that specifically are focused on reaching out to churches and church leaders. And sometimes it's as simple as that. It's just taking some time to pray. So let us know. I didn't get any other comments. Okay. My son's doing a great job of comments. So I appreciate you, buddy. But hey, if you like the work we're doing, drop a comment, thumbs up, whatever, subscribe to this YouTube channel. And we're going to continue to work on updating our technology and our strategies so we can reach more people, so we can protect faith, family, and freedom in the state of Texas. So we'll have new updates soon on this YouTube channel from Texas Values. God bless.